Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another training vlog or training overview or training journal. It's been a hot minute. The last couple weeks, I've been viciously sick. Whatever has been making the rounds has been messing a lot of people up, and unfortunately, it laid me on my ass for about 3 weeks. So, have not been doing a lot of training and haven't been doing a lot of vlogging because I've had no voice and if I walk up the stairs, I start hacking up a lung. So this is one of my sessions back. I was still dealing with it a bit at this point, but it was that weird phase of being sick near the tail end where some days you feel good, some days you felt bad. So this was the day I felt good. So I came in and I started getting some work done. So today, or this session was more just like addressing some of the gaps I have in my skill set with the lifts. As you can see here, I'm doing a complex off the rack, focusing on my split jerk. My split jerk has always needed a bit of work. I basically have two left feet. So the idea was to do a single push press, a single power jerk, and then a single split jerk from the rack, and just kind of keep going up in weight. And as the weight gets heavier, if I felt that I needed to drop the push press, I would drop the push press. And then when the weight gets heavier, I would drop the power jerk and then just kind of work my way up to a relatively challenging split jerk single. So one thing to keep in mind is that getting sick absolutely floored me, and this was my first time doing this complex ever, so I kind of sandbagged it and went light just to kind of feel out what it would be like, when I make it to the end. Like, would I feel primed and ready to go? Would my shoulders feel tired or my legs feel tired? So, yeah, these are really light weights. So I'm ending off here at 85 kilos for a power jerk and then a split jerk. Um, yeah, I think what I do next is 90 just for the split, and it's a pretty horrendous split if I remember correctly. Either 90 or 95. Yeah, so that was my 90. That was not a great split jerk. One thing I'm really working on is just making sure that dip and drive is as solid, straight, and like as perfect as possible because with my challenges with the split jerk, it could be a number of different things. So being able to kind of nail the most important thing is really the focus. So getting a really good dip and drive and driving out of that dip is great because then if I still am having issues, but I've got a good dip and drive, then I know that those issues lie elsewhere. So after this, we moved on to back squats. So this is the traditional back squat. I say that because I squat twice a week or 3 times a week. I have a pause back squat, a front squat, and then a regular back squat. So here we're just working up to like a semi-challenging single. It'd been a little while since I've squatted heavy, so yeah, I'm just kind of seeing how it all feels as I go up in weight. So I don't go as heavy as I can. However, I go as heavy as what felt okay for this training session. So we have, what is it, 90, 100, 105 kilos on the bar right now. I'm taking my sweet ass time to unrack it. So 105 isn't anything challenging by any means, but once again, because it had been a little while since I had squatted heavy, I think I was just like taking it more seriously than I needed it to be. So now we're up to 110 once again, just as like an intro back into squatting. Um, yeah, like I think one of the challenges with training, especially when you're like a quote unquote athlete, is what I call myself. So, an athlete with a full time job and a sort of pay to play sport, which is Olympic weightlifting in Canada and also just like in a lot of, I'd say, Western countries where you don't get the same level of funding from the state or sponsorships from the state. It makes it does make it harder to attract talent, so to speak. And for a lot of us who get into this because of passion for the sport and passion for competing and training, um, it's things we get into a little bit later in our life because it's a pay to play sport and they're not recruiting athletes at 8 or 10 through programs. So this is 120. I think this is where I ended. So I'm chalking this up for a little win for myself, mostly because like 120 is nowhere near my max by any means. However, for once again a return to lifting after what felt like I think like a week and a bit off because of the cold. I mean, you can even hear me still have that cough. 120 is pretty good, and also like I made that 120 look easier than I remembered feeling. Right? I think that like having those gaps of time off are a little bit more obviously speaking like common for the quote unquote adult athlete. So we have to kind of reconcile the experience of returning to our weights and being like, this is hard as hell. So here are my accessories for today. I'm doing probably the worst set of GHRs I've ever seen myself do in my life. Um, I thought I was doing okay until I realized, first of all, I was hinging a ton at the hips at the end. And two, my head was like all over the place. Like it was flopping back and forth. So this is also the nice thing about training vlogs and also just filming yourself and your accessories is you realize when you're not doing a good job. So GHRs, I've added them in because I have a weak hamstring and glute, or weak hamstrings and glutes, and they could use some work. So I'm chalking it up to once again a small win for the GHRs, and my goal is to improve the form over time and add reps, and then work towards maybe Nordic curls, maybe a full JHR where you go all the way down. We'll see where I take it, but I do need to work on the form. But I am at least happy that I can still do them, even if they're not relatively well done. So next up are walking lunges. Yeah, with all the squatting, I realized I don't do a ton of unilateral work, and I figured some walking lunges would do me some good to slap a bit of meat on those twig legs I got. So I did a couple sets of walking lunges, and once again, it's a lightweight. It's my first time doing hypertrophy work in a little while, now that we're on a sort of extended off season. So the goal is to add reps and weight over time. I also did some other stuff like close grip bench pressing, but I did not film those because it was embarrassingly light because we don't bench much. But that was today.